Okay, you've got Radio TV Phono Nut here, and for those of you who have expressed concern about me since I haven't put up any videos lately, I'm happy to report that I'm doing okay. Nothing is wrong. It's just I've been caught up with life in general, as they say, and just really haven't had time to do any electronic repairs or YouTube videos. However, I'd like to take a few minutes to share with you my most recent estate sale finds. But before I do that, let me give you a little background on the estate sale, the circumstances behind it. When my father retired from the railroad back in the early 80s, him and some of the other older guys who worked with him on the railroad formed a railroad retirement club that met once a month for potluck lunch and socialization and etc., etc. And me being a young kid, I'll admit that I didn't always want to go with him to those meetings. You know, me being a young kid and room full of older people. Of course, things were a lot better when some of the other club members would bring their grandchildren and whatnot with them. Well, around 1989, I guess it was, I met this older couple that worked for a different railroad than where my father worked, but my dad knew him. Now, this couple was married in 1934. I believe she was 15, he was 19. They were married for 73 years when he passed away. And when he passed away, her health rapidly declined, as you might expect. You don't live with somebody for that long and then lose them and then not suffer some consequences from it. But this couple were very generous to me and very generous to a lot of people. They never had any children, and I sort of looked at them like grandparents. And when they needed help with something, I'd do what I could to help them out, and they'd do anything in the world to help me and anyone else out that needed it. They were very active in the church and their community. In fact, she's told me stories about them getting married during the Great Depression and not having an automobile for the first several years of their marriage, and him serving in World War II and them living in various places while he was in the Army. And she once told me that these kids today don't know the half of it, and you know, most of them wouldn't stay together through what we went through, and I had to agree with her, because it seems like in today's world, people in my generation, they get a divorce over the least little thing. But this older couple that I knew, and like so many other couples from that era, they had genuine love for one another, and they worked through the problems. Well, last October, she passed away, and here a couple of weeks ago, they had an estate sale at her house. Now, normally I don't get up at the crack of dawn to attend estate sales, but I knew there were some things in her house that I just like to have, you know, just because these people were very close to me. So I got up and stood in line and bought several radios, a console stereo, an Emerson fan, and an old Kenmore electric motor. Here's one of the radios I picked up, a Sears Silvertone AM clock radio from about 1965. This is a standard 5-tube set. I haven't done anything to any of this stuff yet. And here's an early 50s Sears Silvertone set that's kind of an oddball. They made a AM-only version in this same cabinet. They made an AM-FM version. And they also made an AM standard broadcast and shortwave version, which seems to be hard to find, and that's what this one is. And out in the garage, I found this old Kenmore 3/4 horsepower AC motor, complete with cloth covered power cord. Best I can tell, this is probably from the late 30s and was likely used on an old Ringer washing machine. I've not done anything to this motor, and it takes off like a top. If I can get it plugged in here. And obviously it does need some cleaning and lubricating, but it's salvageable. I also picked up this Emerson Jr. 2-speed oscillating fan, and the oscillator arm is missing, but I think I have a junker fan somewhere that I can get the parts off of, and needs to be rewired, but I think it's salvageable. And just as I was getting ready to leave the house, someone that I'd been talking to spotted this old radio that I totally missed. It was actually sitting on its side and was filthy dirty. I thought it was just an ordinary Bakelite radio when I saw it. That's how filthy it was. And I chased down the guy running the estate sale, and I said, "Hey, how much for this?" And he said, "No, $10. So I paid him the $10 and loaded my stuff up and left. Well, after I got it home and cleaned it up a little bit, I discovered that this is a Motorola Catalan set from about 1939 or so. It still needs some polishing and cleaning up of the case, and there's one little bad spot right there that you can see, but maybe I can fill that in with something. And the dial lens is totally disintegrated, but someone on eBay sells reproductions, so replacing that shouldn't be a big deal. In fact, I posted a thread on the Antique Radio page about this set, and I got a couple of private messages from people offering to buy the set, but the fact is I don't want to sell any of this stuff, and it's not a question of what it's worth. You know, I could probably get a fair chunk of change for this set if I wanted to sell it, but I don't want to. These items belong to a family that was very dear to me, and I just want to restore them and hang on to them. Now, one thing I will say that ticked me off is at the estate sale, they had all of her personal photographs from 1930 whatever up until the more recent years just tacked to the wall and strewn everywhere, trying to sell the pictures for $2 a piece. Their marriage license was even still hanging on the wall, as well as some other awards that they had won over the years. And even if the family didn't want any of that stuff, and I don't think there were very many surviving family members left, but even if no one wanted that stuff, you would think the people running the estate sale would have enough respect to not attempt to sell that stuff. But apparently that's not the case. Anything for $1. In fact, when I was walking through the house, I was reminded of Shango 066's video a while back of the estate sale he attended, where they were even selling the answering machine with all of the messages still on the phone. And I just find that totally disrespectful, and I can tell you that this lady would be rolling over in her grave if she knew total strangers were coming in her house and just rummaging through her personal photos and other items like a bunch of vultures. I just think that all of that type of stuff, if no one wanted it, it should have been put all in a box and put away somewhere, not stuck out for sale for people to buy. Okay, there's a little more to this story. Back in the mid-'60s, a local pharmacy moved to a new location in town, and one of the prizes that they gave away in celebration of their new store was an Olympic console stereo, which this couple won. It probably sat in the same place in her home since 1965. During my years of going over there, I never actually saw the stereo with the lid raised because it always had junk and whatnots on top of it. But she always told me, when I die, you're going to get the stereo. She said, I'm going to leave a note on it with instructions of what to do with it. So I said, okay. Well, about a year or two before she died, I was over there helping her do something with her television. And she said, I'm going to go ahead and give you this picture of me standing in front of the stereo. And the other two guys you see pictured here are the gentleman that owned the pharmacy. Back then, people took pride in when they got something new. This is not the only time I've ran across pictures of people standing with their new stereo or their new color TV or their new automobile or new appliances or whatever. But today it seems like people don't have that pride anymore. They take it for granted and they use it for a couple of years until they get tired of it, and then they throw it out and buy something else. Well, after she passed away, I'd never heard from anybody regarding the stereo, and I wasn't about to contact anybody. I didn't want to come across as sounding greedy or anything like that. I just took the position, if I ever get it, fine. If I don't, then no big deal. Well, when I found out she was having the estate sale, I noticed the stereo and the pictures that were on the estatesales.net page. And I got in touch with the guy running the sale, and he said it was priced at $75. Well, normally that was a little more than I would pay for a console stereo, but since it was hers, I decided I might try to go for it. Well, the problem was, number one, I was catching a lot of heat over the amount of stuff that I already have over here. Number two, I didn't really have any way to get it home. So I just went in and bought the few items that I just showed you, and I just resigned myself to the fact that I wasn't going to get the stereo. Well, I'd made a post on one of the Remember When pages on Facebook about my town concerning this couple, and someone read it, and the next day, Sunday afternoon, everything was half price, but still not having a way to get the stereo home presented a problem. Well, someone who had read one of my posts called me, and she said the stereo is still over there, and he's marked it down to $35 if you can get over there to pick it up. And I said, well, I appreciate the call, but I just don't see any way that I can get over there. And she said, well, I'm sure the guy running the sale will work with you if you can get up with him. So I contacted him, and he said, if you can find somebody to help you, and if they have a truck, then just come by my office and I'll give you a key to the house and you can go pick up the stereo. You can have it for $35. So I called the one person I know that has a truck and pretty much begged and pleaded for help. And after a couple of days, me and him got together and went over and got the stereo. Of course, by the time I got back in the house, just about everything else was gone. The only other electronics left was a beat-up K-Part radio that was overpriced and some beat-up little transistor sets from the 80s. I didn't bother with them. There was a pile of easy listening records that were in the stereo, but they had been removed and placed in another pile. So I called him on the phone and asked him about them, and he said, just give me whatever you want to for them. Me being an honest person, I wasn't going to take so much as a speck of dust out of that house that someone didn't know about it. And I really appreciate this estate sale person working with me on this and allowing me to get the stereo. Okay, we're running out of time on the camera, so let me shut up and we'll walk down to the basement where the stereo is and we'll have a look at it. And here it is, all 6 feet of it. The speaker grill cloth is going to need to either be cleaned or replaced, and there's some marks and tape residue on the cabinet, but it's very restorable. In fact, here's some masking tape residue right here, so I'm wondering if this was the note explaining that I was to get this and someone ripped it off. But it doesn't matter. It's in my possession now, and I was very happy to give the guy $35 for it. Now let's look at the inside. Now, the lighting's not the best down here, but judging from date codes, it's a 65 model. It's all tubes. We have a BSR record changer and an AM/FM tuner. Now, YouTube member Spats Bear has a similar 66 model that's hybrid, meaning it has a tube tuner and a solid state amp. Now, despite the fact that this set is 6 feet long, it has a rather low-end stereo chassis in it. It uses a single 50 EH5 output tube for each channel, but it does have 12-inch speakers in it, so that's a plus. But, you know, given the circumstances of this set, I don't care how low-end it is. I plan on restoring it and putting it in my shop and using it. And we even have the instructions that came with the unit. And here's the stack of records I got, some in covers, some not in covers. And over here we have just a bunch of empty covers with no LPs to go in them. Take a look and see what we have here. Piano at Twilight. Pete Fountain. And Christmas record. Very common thrift store staple. And Lawrence Welk. Billy Vaughn, another common record. Russ Morgan, another Lawrence Welk. The Rockin' Strings, this is a promotional copy on a pink Decca label. Les Elgert. As you can see, your typical 50s and 60s elevator type music, but I'm going to hang on to these, keep them with the stereo. But yeah, I'd say it was meant for me to get this, especially seeing as how this was one of the few items that wasn't sold after the sale. And just a little word of advice, if you have things that you want given to somebody after you pass away, then make sure it's done legally. You know, don't rely on word of mouth or a note left on the item or some type of verbal agreement, because it probably won't pan out the way you wanted it to. So just make sure everything is nice and legal. I was just lucky that I was able to get this stereo. Okay, you've seen my latest estate sale finds and heard the story about a very special couple that meant a lot to me. And we got 9 seconds left, so I'll say thanks for watching and more to come later.